what's up, y'all? It's your girl, More. Hey, beautifuls. Come on in up in here. All right, so girl had an epiphany. I want to talk about not a full-on gist of my experience, but just a little bit. But more so, speaking of what the title in for the video is, divorce, and what does the Bible say about it. If you have been through a divorce, like I have, then you feel all some kinds of ways, right? So I'll just talk about in my case, and y'all can let me know how you feel about it or what your experiences are. But I'm going to talk about me and some of the things that I kind of had questions about. Number one, the controversy between people out there in the church saying that it's a sin to get a divorce. Because we know some scriptures in regards to that talk about divorce being a sin. But you got to put everything into context. Number one, that was more so in reference to men back in the day. Women really weren't allowed to just divorce and go here, there, to and fro. But long story short, it was men just being at that point, abusing the system, the laws in play at that time, just getting a divorce whenever they wanted, to just throw a woman away and go get another one, and everything just cool. Just like if I want to just buy a toy, when I'm done with that toy playing with it, let me just go get another toy. But I feel like, long story short, they came back and they talked about, we're not going to do that no more. We changing the game. We got some new laws going into effect. We don't want you just be going and getting divorces nilly-willy. So, in my opinion, that's pretty much where that came from in that context. You can kind of break that down however you want to look at it. But long story short, that would be the gist of it in my own wording. So, people use that in the church still nowadays, and whatever views they have with different types of denominations in church, to say that it's a sin to get a divorce. It's not necessarily, in my opinion, a sin to get a divorce. And I realized some things that was in the Bible. So, we're going to talk about that today. And that is, my friends, beautifuls, kings, Xerxes, and the story of Esther. That has been there all along. But I don't think anybody really thinks about this story in terms of divorce. And just by mentioning that, if you know the story of Esther, you probably have an aha moment if you never thought about it in this light, which I had never before. Because with that story, we usually just think about Queen Esther and her purpose and for being to help the Jews at that time. But we're going to back it up a little bit, and I want to actually read a few scriptures in here and kind of go over my opinion and something that I feel like actually helped me. And it's kind of funny that I think that until I actually experience the next couple seasons in my life with going back to being a divorcee and singleness, and I'll come back to that in just a minute. So I am going to read a little bit about this in the scripture. Alright, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to read the gist of what I feel like I need to. You guys can go back and get your Bibles, of course, and follow along. But I'm going to go and read, starting off, and you can follow along if you want. The book of Esther, chapter 1, starting at verse 10. And I'm just going to read on down. And you can follow along, and then we'll come back to the book of Esther after this and kind of talk about a couple of things. So, book of Esther, chapter 1, verse 10 is where I'm going to start. I'm not going to read the whole thing again. You need to go back and read it for yourself, which I highly do recommend. Amazing story. So many things that you can actually pull and get from it, as we know with the Bible in general. So, chapter 10, verse 1, So, chapter 1, verse 10, it says, and I'm reading from the King James Bible, by the way. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Memucan. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher these names because I'm not going to go through all that right now. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Bizbah, Harbonah, Bigtha, and Abijah, Zethar, and Zarkis, the 7 chamberlains that served in the presence of Ahasuerus, which is also known as King Xerxes. So Ahasuerus, the king, to bring Vashti, the queen, before the king with the crown royal, to shew the people and the princess her beauty, for she was fair to look on. Meaning that she was fine as wine, beautiful, baby. Like you, beautifuls. Verse 12. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. I'm going to read that one again. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. Then the king said to the wise men, which knew the times, for so was the king's manner towards all that knew law and judgment. And the next unto him was Kashina, Shethar, Admitha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsina, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, which saw the king's face, and which sat the first in the kingdom. So they was real close to the king, y'all. Just sitting all around here, up in here. His right and left hand men. What should we do unto Queen Vashti according to the law? Because she had not performed the commandment of the king Ahasuerus by the chamberlains. So what are we going to do about this queen? She don't want to come. Basically what they saying. Basically going against the grain, going against the laws of the time. Because if you, with the law being at that time, back in the day, the king called you as the queen, it's your duty to come. And she wasn't wanting to come. Now, there's a lot of back-end story to that, controversy and different things that was going on at the time. But she had reasons for not wanting to come. I'll leave it at that. That's not really my point for today. You can go back and read that as well. And the context in the matter of how he actually requested her to come. There's some context behind that as well. And the way that the king did that. I'm going to say at this point, from what I've learned from the background of that, I disagree that he did call her in the way that he did. I don't think that he should have. But regardless, he called her. She didn't come. So there is where the turmoil begins, I will say. So verse 15 says, what shall we do unto the queen Vashti according to the law, because she had not performed the commandment of the king Ahasuerus, or King Xerxes, by the chamberlains? And Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Vashti the queen hath not done wrong to the king only, but also to the princes and to all the people that are in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus. For this deed of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes, when it shall be reported. The king Ahasuerus, Xerxes, commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in before him, but she came not. Verse 18, likewise shall the ladies of Persia and Media say this day unto all the king's princes which have heard of the deeds of the queen, thus should there arise too much contempt and wrath. If it please the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of Persia and the Medes, that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. That's deep. And when the king's decree which he shall make shall be published throughout all his empire, for it is great, all the wives shall give to their husbands honor, both to great and small. And the saying pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. For he sent letters into all the king's provinces, into every province, according to the writings thereof, and to every people after every language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, and that it should be published according to the language of every people. All right, y'all. So it's a lot of stuff that just went down right there. So that's the background of my point of what I'm actually getting to. Let me see if I can speed this little thing up here, because I want to go on over. Let's see. All right. So I'm going to skip on over to chapter 2 of Esther, verse 15, and I'm going to read on down. Skipping over to chapter 2, verse 15, and I'm going to read down. Now when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go in unto the king, she required nothing but what Haggai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. So she was fine as wine too, y'all. Fine as wine, just like you, beautifuls. So Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus, or King Xerxes, into his house royal in the 10th month, which is the month Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Woo! Okay. So I'm going to stop right there, because that's really the gist of what I wanted to get at and what I wanted to get into, or talk about, rather. So, now let me back this thing up, talking about me, right? So, I'm looking for scriptures, you know, because when you deal with life situations, you want to actually be able to find something in the word. That's what the word is there for, to be able to find something to hold on to so you can get through the tough moments, right? So, here's the thing. One of the things that I feel was one of my biggest challenges going through a divorce, and I'm sure that most, if not all, people can relate who have been through a divorce, that it creates an embarrassment, a disappointment. Maybe you feel like failure. So in my case, I pretty much felt those things among other things, but that's kind of what the focus is that I want to talk about, and the whole notion about having your first marriage, going through a possible next marriage if you decide to go and remarry. So when I went into marriage, and I'm sure that there's a lot of Christians out there who can relate, I went into the marriage never wanting to divorce, and I'm sure that pretty much all people get married. I don't think many people really think about getting divorced. And if you go into it that way, then that's on you. But in my views of Christianity and everything that I've been taught and raised to believe and studying the word for myself, I didn't believe in getting a divorce. I took the notion of it's just not an option for me. It's not an option. However, when you've gone through so much, and I'll leave it at that, when you've gone through so much, to shorten the experience down, when you have gone through so much where you know that you've done all that you can do, pray, got on your face, worship, meditated over and over and over and over again, tried everything you can try, even going through marital counseling, Christian counseling, or if you want to call it religious counseling, or if you want to go into even a secular counseling, and I'm naming these things out because these are the things that I've gone through. And you go through all these things and nothing works, and you realize you're in a relationship that's just not going to work. I'm not going to go into many more of the details, but when you've gone through that and you know that you've done everything right possibly that you can do, that you know to do, even taking other advice from other people, things that you've accepted advice on doing, and it still doesn't work out, and this thing is getting to the point where it's all about pretty much destroying your life. How about destroying your health to the point where you just know that it's going to be you or this marriage? So in my experience, I got to that point where it was going to be me and my health and my sanity and everything else around me, all good things, all wonderful things that God has brought me with, all the blessings, or this marriage that seems like it has now become something that's more of torment than anything. What do you do after you've gone through as much time as you know you can bear, prayed about it, and getting to the point where you have peace about that thing, that you've been released from that thing, spiritually speaking, because you definitely don't want to do it if you haven't been released. But what do you do at that point? Divorce. So I'll just say this. I went through all of those mental processes and dealt with it for several years. This wasn't something that just was an overnight thing. One of those types of people where you're in one day and out the next. It was definitely nowhere near like that after what I've just explained. So I had to get a divorce. And so having to get a divorce when it just did not work out, then you're going to have to get a divorce. Long story short. And I'm kind of hesitating over my words because I don't want to speak too much about it at this point because I'm over it. But I really believe that this can help a lot of people. So after the divorce, then what do? So after the divorce, with now having gone through it, signed your papers, you got your papers, like Usher said, you know. I like the words of Michael Todd, Minister Usher. When you get your papers and, you know, after that moment happens or whatever you want to call it, the instance where you're no longer connected to this being, then all these other things start to set in if they haven't already set in. But just going through that, I had trouble finding things in the Word of God with the whole process of the divorce. And so recently, God had given me something with the book of Esther. And you probably can see where I'm going with this, where there is actual information with someone who has gone through this in the Bible. That would be King Xerxes, King Ahasuerus. So he was married to Queen Vashti. And they were doing this, butting heads. It did not work out. And basically, that was a divorce. As you read from chapter 1, verse 15, she didn't want to perform the duty of going in when she was being called or being summoned to the presence of the king in the palace. Rightfully so, I would say. From the background, if you do your research on it, I don't really see anything wrong with what she did, but it just wasn't working out, you know. And so there was things that went into it with you butting heads. And let me go into something here in regards to another thing that I found a part of what I'm referring to. It's really something that you don't want to take lightly if you go into a marriage or go into a divorce. But it's just really interesting when you look at chapter 1, verse 16, where it says that, and Memucan answered before the king and the princess Vashti the queen had not done wrong to the king only, but also to the princes and to all the people that are in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus. So that's the funny part right there to me, because that's something that kind of like need to get a little bit of light shed on it. Again, not condoning any of what happened, but it's really interesting that it mentions that, you know, the king's getting all, they're robbing the king of, she's doing wrong, she's not coming for the king. What are we going to do, king? What are we going to do, king? His people around him, his consultants and counselors around him, his chamberlains, saying that this is not something that she's just doing that's wrong to the king. This is something that she's causing that's doing wrong to, that's going to affect everybody in Persia, everybody that is in the kingdom of the king. So everybody that the king is connected to, this is affecting. So that's something that just is something to take, that's something that we want to take note of, that when you go into vows with someone, you say that this is the life that you're going to enter. And just as you're standing up there, if you're going to have a huge wedding, or even if it's just one witness, whatever, those people that are there to see you, the groom and the bride and the groom, all of your family, all of your friends, those are all the people that are connected to you, symbolically speaking and physically speaking, internationally speaking. Among that, even people who are not able to make your wedding per se, but just in your life in general, everybody that you may inspire, you may touch, you are connected to in one way, shape, or another, whether you know it or not. You are affecting other people. And I want to say this, that's something that should be said, that is actually an example of what we're seeing today in this world. This is kind of going a little bit off the subject, but it kind of brings it back, thinking about the day and age that we're living in, how there's so many divorces, there's so many broken homes. There's so much going on these days where everybody's just dividing, and it's like this and it's like that. And when you really look at that, that ain't nothing but Satan causing division in the home. And look at the effects in the day and age that we live in, with so much division in all of the homes that have been broken in one way, shape, or another. All the children that it affects and everything else connected to that in society, and how they have to be raised after that point, and how they were going on this straight path with a wonderful foundation for what it is. A marriage is good. So I'm just saying a straight path in regards to that. Not looking even at their backgrounds. But that's something that, of course, we want to take into account. But just that one thing right there, just a marriage in itself, in a family, that is a good thing from God. So if you going into a marriage knowing all of that, and these people are connected to you, and the children and everyone, and those children going to school systems, and in the workforce, and in just social everywhere, this whole world, that is just breaking things up, right? So it's nothing lightly to go into, which is why, you have those people who are really patient about and trying to make sure that they go into the right situation. So it ain't nothing to play with. And I just wanted to kind of put that out there, and we can just see how this has affected the world these days of what's going on. But let me pull it back in and go back to another point that I wanted to make. I just wanted to say that because when you decide to divorce, you're not just affecting yourself and that person. You are literally, it's like the butterfly effect. It's affecting everything, whether you realize it or not, because we are all connected in one way, shape, or form. And so that, to me, was just a wonderful example where you can actually see just from that one scripture alone how it affects everything. But again, bringing it all back in. Let me get off of that, y'all. But that's real deep when you really think about it. So I hope y'all can just take that and maybe meditate on it. But let me move on to the next thing. So basically, long story short, again, that was a divorce. So they split and they separate, right? So then he's in the same situation that I found myself in. Divorce, right? This is the person that you vowed to be with your rest of your life. That you're going to build this great thing with. Because marriage, saying your vows, that's just the beginning, right? So anyway, that thing crumbling down. You got these emotions, disappointment, embarrassment, what have you, feeling a failure. But here's the thing that I want to come and tell you guys. God brought me to tell you this. God can do a new thing. And that new thing is Queen Esther. That new thing is Queen Esther. Not only did God bring a new thing for King Ahasuerus, or King Xerxes, she had to go through, if you read the backstory of it, if you know the story, which is pretty popular, most Christians, Bible-going church believers, y'all know the story, that she had to go through this strenuous process. And not to say that Vashti didn't. It's just the fact that she had to go through this process to become something that was completely out of her element, something that she wasn't even familiar with. She wasn't even Persian. She was Jewish. So she had to do a lot more, put in a whole lot more effort to become the queen of King Ahasuerus. That's something to be said right there. And that's something even in my experience right now that is a blessing for me. And I'll get back to that. But she had to do so much more, in my opinion, from being a person who had no idea about Persian customs, nothing, to go in, become this whole thing, learn all these new things, become brand new in so many ways, to learn something she wasn't, just to become a queen, to become a spouse. Now, that's something that you really got to think about, because we talk about, her being a queen, and this person who, was kind of, if you want to look at it as just a regular citizen, she was like down here on the ranking level, and the king is up here, and she comes pretty much from nothing in a sense, but we know she's something. But in that sense, with the ranking, I'm just speaking in, she had no authority. She had no rank. She couldn't go and make any commands to do anything. But she goes through this whole process where she meets the king up here. And then in the last scripture, we find that with all the versions through this whole year-long process with the bathing, learning how to speak, learning all the customs, learning about just everything, beauty treatments, everything that she needed to know that they had to teach her. She learns all these things. And not only does she learn these things, she takes a humble attitude, a submissive attitude as a servant, y'all. What can I do to please the king? What can I do to be all that I can be for him to pick me, for him to want to be with me, is what she asked the chamberlain. Was it Haggai? No. Anyway, if you read the one movie that came out some years ago, very, very good movie and depiction of that. But anyway, she has this person there who was one of the eunuchs or chamberlains, and he kind of took her under his wing and taught her everything beyond what all the other virgins or maidens would learn, would get to know, because God ordered her steps. So, and you know, this was a divine thing that God had planned out and written out the steps of how King Xerxes was going, and it was also writing out the steps of how Queen Esther was going. But they meet up here on a new level where, let me go back to Vashti. Vashti was Persian. She wasn't Jewish, so I'm assuming she was Persian. I'm gonna take that back. I don't really know where she was from. Y'all can help me on that, but I'm assuming that she was Persian because it doesn't really go into that much, I don't think, in the background of her. So I'm assuming this is just where she was from, and he picked her, whatever reason, you know, thinking that this is the one, like we go into marriage. But Queen Esther comes from a whole nother area. We know it's just like they're kind of doing this because we know at the end of the day what her purpose was, to be able to come and save the Jews. So they're clearly not that. They're like you could actually probably argue and say that the Persians might as well have been the enemies of the Jews, because they were pretty much from the Mordecai, the backhand man, trying to cause a plan to destroy the Jews. Not saying that this is the views of all the Persians, but because of what he was orchestrating in the background, trying to manipulate the king to destroying all of the Jews, extinguishing them. That was what Esther's purpose was. So it was almost like they were the enemies at the same time. But anyway, for them to be able to come together on this level, God's purpose and plan, he was able to create a new thing on another level, restoring a marriage. King Xerxes was able to have a new wife that was for him, because it says that she was there for such a time as that, you know, and he loved her above all the other ones. So he getting this brand new shiny thing. She ain't no thing, but I'm gonna say a diamond. He's getting this wonderful new thing that, you know, is better than what his past was, clearly, because he's moving forward, and we can only go forward. So it's greater than, it's on another level. And I hope this is something that will be for somebody. And I'm ministering to myself and prophesying my life to myself right now. This was a word for me, y'all. And I'm getting passionate about it, very excited, just because God was able to do a new thing. And that's kind of what the main gist of this message is, that I want you guys to be able to see with this story that this has been there all along, since the beginning of time. That has been in there, but I've gone for so long. So many people that have gotten a divorce have gone for so long, I'm sure, have never even tripped out the fact that that story, that real life story, has been there all along. And there you go. We never even tripped off of it in that way. So I'm glad that God has been able to use me to shed a light on that, because it was just like, man, one day I just had an aha moment. I know that was just God just downloading something in my spirit that was just amazing. Just meditate on that. Like, that inside brought me to tears, like spiritually brought me to tears and tears of joy, to be able to know that, you know, God was doing a new thing in my life. So let me talk about that in my life, right? So that I know that after going through the divorce, after going through a period of being a divorcee or singleness, and not sure what I even wanted to do at the point, different phases of that. Like, I went through a period where I didn't want to be with nobody. I didn't want to do anything, you know, and thinking about, you know, having a child, being in mommy mode. I was just in that mode, just not feeling pretty. You have those things where you don't feel like you want to go on to the dating scene. You have the thing where you may feel like, do I still have it? Do I still got it? You know, you go through all kinds of periods. And after you deal with something so nasty and ugly, you just be like, well, I don't even want to deal with that thing no more. I'm good on that. I'm good on relationships. I'm good on the dating scene. Is it really even worth it? Is there anything even out there for me? But I'm here to tell you that God has something for you, just like he has something for me. A ram in the bush, something that he actually wanted to do, which was a diamond, a new thing, a great thing, a better thing. And I'm here to tell you today that I've gone through the different periods in the processes, from the singleness to not wanting to date, to trying to push and force myself to get back out there, getting to the point where I'm like, okay, well, it would be nice, you know, to still be able to have someone there, you know, but if it's going to be anywhere near like it was before, then I don't want to do it. But God. And so I've gone through that period, and then pushing myself to get out there, just kind of putting my little feet in the water, you know, here and there, talking to people, you know, and having all these walls up and being real quick to be like, I can see red flags here or there for a mile. Oh, nope, that ain't it. Cutting that off. You know, I can talk to somebody on a phone call, one text message. Even if you even get to the point of even getting my number, first of all, or me getting your number, first of all, because just even from the looks of somebody or the way that you say hello to me, all kinds of things, you know, that I actually was going through. If you had any experiences like I have, you know, I was just not there. And so from going through all of that to finally getting to the point from dating, you know, getting out there, having some relationships here and there, whether you want to call it partner, dating, boyfriend, girlfriend, or what have you, going through those, getting back in there, then getting to something where it was more serious and it's still not being the right thing for me and not working out, just wasn't quite fitting my puzzle, you know, wasn't the right puzzle piece. Then finally, you know, just God getting me to a place where he said, you know what, we're going to remove all of that. We're going to get you in a place where we're going to have you to just sit there and find yourself, you know, find yourself again. See what you like. See, you know, the things that you like. And I'm not just talking about in a relationship, just getting to know myself, dating myself, you know, on even a spiritual level, you know, going back and reading my word, getting stronger in that, building my faith, building everything about me that I could possibly build, trying to be a virtuous woman of God, Proverbs 31 woman, everything that you can think of. God had me in this place, right? Where I'm just not even thinking about no relationships. I got to that point where God was just like, no, I don't want you dating nobody. And then I got to the point where I'm like straight happy with myself. I'm good, you know. I'm at the point where I'm just happy and I'm satisfied. And I'm finding things that I like, little things that I always had wanted to do, I never gotten to do, you know, dating myself, literally going out, eating at a restaurant by myself, or going to do something, finding out things that I like. I've done all kinds of little things by myself. And it was weird at first, but I straight got happy with doing those things. Like I can be happy all by myself, you know, kind of a thing. But it was at that point when God actually removed me from that. And I think one of my dear friends had described it as God kind of stepping in the front of you, where you are not able to be seen by the right person that he has for you, and you can't even see them. You know, he won't let that happen until it's your time. And I remember a period not long ago where God basically told me in my spirit so many words that I'm removing my covering from you from that. I'm going to allow this thing to, I'm removing that from you. I'm going to allow you to be seen. I'm going to remove that veil, you know, so that my future husband can find me. Because that's what it says. He findeth the wife. It's a good thing. When I was finally able to be happy with myself, happy with my relationship with God, that's when he was able to do that. And I've heard people talk about stuff like that in the past. I feel like I had kind of gone through a period like that in the past before I went through the first marriage. But this was completely different. It's just like a whole nother level. That's the best way I can just kind of describe it. And when you can really stop worrying about all of those things, get rid of all of the noise and get to that peace. Like one of Michael Todd's messages, again, I love to reference my boy because he's an awesome minister, pastor, shepherd, he had this one message where he showed a video with this dove in the middle of this waterfall, and kind of like it wasn't a storm, but it seemed like it, because he was just like this real small dove in this big old waterfall, just cascading down, all of this loud noise and water on the side of this cliff of this mountain. He was sitting right in there, so small in this image, at peace. So God can put you in that, no matter what you're going through. You can be in that moment of peace. And it's at that point when you get to that moment of peace and you're happy, you're comfortable, you're content, you're happy with what God is to you and all that he has for you and all he's done for you. In those moments, when you can be in that, and I'm not saying it's going to happen like right at that moment, but God knows when you're ready. But when you get to that place, you ain't ready till you get to that place where you can just truly be happy. And so I was finally able to get to that point, and then God removed the veil. And so now I have a testimony. I got a praise report that God has brought someone into my life that is very special, that it makes me very, very happy. And it's a diamond. It's a diamond. Even though I am female and he is male, of course, it's like he's my Queen Esther. You know, in a sense, where I had to go through that thing, and I'm not afraid to remarry. I feel the confirmation from God that I've got the approval and the okay and the blessings. God is here. He's in all of this. And I couldn't be more happy right now in that. And I just want it to be something that's an encouragement to you guys, that we want to look like the people that are commended in this word. That's what we want to look like. And this is what we want our lives to look like through every storm. And I can say right now, that is my words. Without having any words in myself, this is my word to be able to speak and explain what my season is right now. And my season is right there where God was able to do a new thing. So those questions that I had, what is it in the Bible that you have for me, God? Going through this, God, what do you have for me? Queen Esther. For such a time as this. In 2020, like I said before in one of my videos, God bringing double, 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 double for your trouble. This is yet a testimony and hopefully a prophetic word or an encouraging word to some of you guys out there. I don't even care if it reaches one person. It's for somebody. Because God downloaded this thing in me, and I know he ain't just give it to me just for me. I don't even care if you watch this video 50 years from now. It's for someone. And I hope that you get the gist of this word. You go and meditate on that thing. Wherever you are in that whole distraught relationship process, God can do a new thing for you. There is a place in the Bible where you can find it. Out of all places, with something that, a story that we definitely don't think about in the context of divorce, but it was there. I'm sure it wasn't easy for Vashti or King Xerxes to go through that, and I'm sure that there was some heartache and some pain or some kind of emotion into it, where even though he was a king, he can just do whatever he wants. That doesn't mean he doesn't have emotion. That doesn't mean that he doesn't have feelings. Just like people who, they say they like have a bajillion dollars, or celebrities on TV, they're still real people. Doesn't mean they don't have feelings or emotions. So I'm sure that there were some emotions involved with that, and him on top of that being up in the forefront, being the king, having to be an example for all his people in the kingdom. You know, I couldn't imagine really the emotions that he could have been going through, having to go through a divorce. You know, that couldn't have caused him any disappointment or at all any embarrassment or anything, any type of emotion. He had to have some kind of emotion, which is why he had the chamberlains or the counselors there to give him advice on what to do next. Because sometimes when you're in a moment, which I have been, you know, where you just can't see your way through, and you do need those counselors there. So can't nobody tell me he ain't had no kind of emotion. So again, I hope that this is a word that is encouraging to you guys. And hopefully, I don't want this video to be too long, but I'm just so thankful and full of joy. We're just happy to bring that word, that God was able to show me something in that. And I just hope that this was for you. Please, if you got any comments, any questions, feel free to message me, comment. Always go ahead and click like, subscribe. Click on the notification bell when I get new videos. I'm going to be uploading them here. And I love you, beautiful. And you guys be blessed.